Good morning. Welcome to Satsang on Sunday, Chandi Mandir in Walden. Today is February 16, for those who like to keep a calendar. And we are going to devote today talk or sharing to the fact of that Navaratra is coming next month, and there won't be another talk that I know of before that, or at least not from me. And it's a subject that I'm beginning to love really because we are studying the Devi, we are studying the relationship between Shiva and Shakti, and it's very interesting. There are many, many books, many commentaries, many videos on YouTube. So this is my small contribution to the cause. In Shanti Mandir, we have been celebrating Navaratra. Now it's going to be the 63rd time, which means 63 every 6 months, uninterrupted. So rain, shine, hail, like today, heat, with Gurudev, without Gurudev, the 63 are celebrated in all the ashrams in Shanti Mandir. So it is very, very auspicious because we have a beautiful, we could say, coincidence last year in the sense that it was the 62nd Navaratra. Gurudev was born in 1962. And it was the 62nd Navaratra in the year, so he turned 62. So it was a triad, like he said everything in the Indian scriptures, 3 or something, and this was very, very auspicious. So today we begin probably another season. So we have it this year from March 29 till April 5th, and it's going to be wonderful because Gurudev will be here, and there's going to be a course to study and understand what this is all about. So now, sometimes when we speak about these things, some people have asked me, but this does really exist? You know, these worlds of the gods, the goddesses, the asuras, which I don't want to use the word demons because they are not demons. In the Christian or Western tradition, it's like the good and the bad have similar weight. We are grateful to the angels and we are afraid of the demons. But really, everything is Shiva. We are Shivas. We have to understand that those beings that are on their way to evolve, to become saints, are not demons, are just somebody like in the connection belt when in the airport, they bring your suitcases. And so they bring it, and there's 1, and there's 2, and you're waiting for yours, and it may come in a minute, it may come in an hour, it might have gotten lost and get back in 1 day, but in any case, it will arrive to its destination, which is yours, your suitcase. So in the same way, what I was thinking is that the asuras is really like almost a sura, which means a demigod, but not yet, like we are. We are students, we are aspirants, we are devotees. We will be, or we realize that we are that. Tomorrow, in 5 minutes, in 10 years, we don't know. So what happens is that this story talks about gods and the other ones, the asuras. And you think, okay, what is the meaning of the word exist? Because existence is in several levels. So it's the subtle level, the dense level, the one we see, the one we perceive with our senses. But we, at this point, cannot believe that only what I perceive with my senses is what exists. And if it's not perceivable with my senses, then it doesn't exist. We cannot think like that because we have microbes and we have very small things that are not perceivable with our senses. And at the same time, so big galaxies and even animals that live in the ocean, like a whale. So our senses are capable only to perceive so much. And that's why we believe in some other things. And I'll tell you, I think a fun example, because I know from a long time that I have been a reader of the Sherlock Holmes books. There's somebody, I don't know, everybody here is too young to know who is Sherlock Holmes, but he's a detective in England that resolves murders and this resolves problems, mysteries, etc. So what happened is that this was invented by a doctor who was a physician and at the same time a writer. Conan Doyle was his name, Arthur Conan Doyle. And if you haven't read any of these books, I highly recommend. They're excellent. So what happens is that this Sherlock Holmes is supposed to live in 221B Bakerfield Street in London. Of course, really, in the flesh, he never existed. But there are tours in England, in London, where they take you to his house, and his house was constructed. So you go on the ground floor, and it's apartments. That's what is 21B. And then you see the small house, as they explaining in the books, narrow staircase, and then everybody knows that he used to play the violin. Everybody knows that he used to smoke a pipe. Everybody knows that he had an attendant or an assistant called Dr. Watson. Everybody who has read anything like that, that is present in our mind. So in the subtle level, they do exist. They do exist because we know even so much about them. And I'll tell you something else interesting. When people are trying here to become a citizen, in the past especially, they try to marry somebody American already. So by the mere fact of marrying that person, you can attain that citizenship. But then the authorities began to create a questionnaire. How much do you know about this person with whom you live? That's 50 questions. They discovered to their total horror that, my love, we know very little about each other. Many people didn't know. So the questions, what does he prefer to eat, or how, the habits. So the thing is, I was thinking, when we talk about mythology, maybe we know more about Sherlock Holmes than about my boyfriend, really, because you have read all these books and you know. And there's another example that I bring that I think is so cute. Romeo and Juliet. Romeo and Juliet, or Romeo in English, Romeo and Juliet. So they live in Verona. Everybody knows they live in Verona, Italy, and their life was tragic. I'm not going to tell the story because I don't know how much time we have. But the thing is that in Verona, there is this house, Via Capello, number 23, in Verona. And the house of Juliet is there, with a balcony at the place where he climbed everything. And then they tell you the story, there's actors and everything. And when somebody is a romantic person, you call him, oh, he's a Romeo. Those characters are embraced in our mind totally. So what happens, I think, with the Chandi Path, after we have heard it for so many times, for so many years, the Devi, the Raktabija, and all these characters are there, and for us, they exist. They exist and they have their own personality. And I always loved the theater since I was very young. And I studied a little of this, and then what I know is that the Greeks had festivals or even seasons meaning like 2-3 months of theater, because they discovered that people had it's called a catharsis, like a therapy, and you reach a point when you resolve your problems by sharing a tragedy, a comedy, a drama, melodrama, etc. They created all of this. And that was free for the people. And why did they do it? To prevent a revolution. Because they knew in February, which is exactly the same month as the carnivals, of which I will speak just a little, then they went there and they saw all these tragedies, like Medea, when the father kills his sons, and it's horrible. And then tragedy comes from the word tragos, which is the trachea, the air pipe. So what happened is that they used to sacrifice an animal. It's the truth. And the animal shouted like poor goat. Ah! So trago, tragedy, it comes from there. And so people went there to know for 3 days, 2-3 days, sitting there, they ate, they went home a little, then came back. The place lasted 2-3 days. And then also they created very famous like comics, stand-up comic, or Aristoteles, all these people. So people were there, they laughed, they commented, they were with one another, they got drunk, everything, the catharsis. And there's also the carnivals in many countries. During those days, like everything is permitted, and then you go and you confess your sins to the priest, and no problem. So this is true. So I was thinking, as I was reading, that Navaratra is a festival. Nobody will say that it's not, because even Gurudev calls it a festival. And what do we do there? Then we bring our thing. Then we bring our problems, our sadness, our depression, our joy. everything to this Navaratra, and we hear the same story several times every 6 months. Now, in India, it's every month. There's like a mini Navaratra, and they celebrate it. But for us, it's every two times a year, and also in the season when the harvest happens, when springtime starts, autumn, it is related with everything, with life. So then, before, our attention span was diminished so much that they calculated you can listen to somebody just for 3 minutes. Teachers do that, and that's why in YouTube they have these little films that is called shorts. So this is long. I mean, this is 3 hours. The Chandi Pathah, which is also called the glory of the goddess, or the glory of Durga, etc. It's for hundreds of years. It's not something we just invented. So we started doing it when we were in Pine Bush, which is another town where the ashram used to be. And I remember the first time that Swami Komalananda, who lives in Magor, but she was then Padma, and then we had a harmonium, and she told me, we're going to chant the Chandi Pathah. Okay, you play the harmonium, it's just 8 syllables, but don't stop. No matter if I do it well or I make a mistake, you go, 8 syllables. There's a name for that meter. So we did it, and that was the beginning. It was very tiring when you're not used to sitting cross-legged for 3 hours, but it was wonderful. And then more recently, there was these things called happenings. Remember, if you were like from the 60s, there were also manifestations, demonstrations against the war, or to protect the trees, or to protect a certain river from being. Anyway, we all have this tendency to get together and celebrate. So we do that and we celebrate. And there was another one. This is my last example, and then I get into the Navaratra because I couldn't help but remembering that there was a show called the Rocky Horror Picture Show. Remember? Rocky Horror Picture Show. And so they have it in a theater. And we went and almost learned all the songs and dressed as the characters of the play and sing with those. We paid and still we sang. They sang and they got paid. I never thought about it before, but this also is a happening. So we do that, and when we get together to Navaratra, we understand many things about life because it is explained very clearly. And we, let me go here. Yeah, also I have all this. This is, of course, Chandi Pathah. So it is not path. It's not the root. It's not a path like this. It's not a Sanskrit word that means the actual ritual reading. So we read something as a ritual, it's called Pataha, okay? Because with the TH, we may get confused. Very important text of Shaktism, of the Shakta ritual. Then this describes the victory of the goddess Durga. So Durga is the main goddess here. And of course, is Parvati? Yes. Is Sati? Si. Is every goddess, but in this particular advocation, she is Durga, which means invincible, or difficult to reach. And many are like 16. When you look up for Sanskrit words, there's usually at least 5 different meanings, but she is powerful. So Devi Mahatmyam, which is the other name for the Chandi Pathah, is called the Testament of the Shakta philosophy. The Testament of the Shakta philosophy. And then it's part of something called the Markandeya Purana. And the Puranas are scriptures, but they're not revelations. They're written, actually, different from the sutras. So this is more like for the people, for the crowds. Or secondary Hindu scriptures, which is said to have been written by the Rishi Markandeya. Then there is a way that literature is created. And I was thinking, what is the word for a story in which there's another story, in which there's another story? Like the dolls, Russian dolls, that you have a doll, then it's smaller inside, and you open in a, it's like never ending, apparently. So it is called a frame story, because here we're going to hear a story. Markandeya is narrating the story. The story consists of a king, a tradesman, and a rishi. And that rishi is going to tell 3 stories about the Devi. So it's like also that construction in literary that I was interested because there are other books like this. It's also called an embedded story. So if people ask you, what are you studying? I'm studying the Chandi Pathah. It's an embedded story. It's everybody tells a story, but one of the characters tells another story. It makes it very interesting in full. Or nested narrative. This is what it is. So the story goes like this. Like there are these asuras, which are mean, and they like to cause trouble, and they are making trouble for the people that feel protected by the gods, but the gods suddenly realize 5 or 10 gods that are getting together that they cannot beat these people because sometimes evil has more power than good. And during this season, the asuras were ruling. So what are we going to do now? What are we going to do? They get together and they said, if we cannot vanquish these people by individually, why don't we get all together and put all our Shaktis together, all our powers together, all our weapons together, like when all the governments, they get together, many countries, and they found like an organization. So they did it, and they concentrated so well that they got, they got all the Shakti together, and from there, they were expecting that an extremely powerful god would come and destroy the enemies. But surprise, it was a very beautiful woman that came from all these Shaktis. So I can show this later when we are after lunch. So it is described that this Durga, she has 10 arms. Sometimes she has 30, but in this case, we're going to talk about 10, because 10 is the number that represents all the directions. So the directions are north, south, east, west, northeast, north, south, southwest, southeast, above and below. So all of this means that she rules all over the universe. It's another way of saying it. It's very poetic. It's like Sandarya Lahari is poetic. So she gets these gifts: the discus of revolving time, the club, which is something like a stick of articulation, the arrow, the bow of determination. So everything. And what I love about this is that we will continue to do Chandi Pathah for many years, as long as we are alive. And each time we discover more, because this is so vast. Sometimes just on this image of Kali, you can give, some people can give a whole talk only about this. So she gets the iron bar of restraint, the pike of attention, a sling, the head of egotism, and a conch for vibrations. So she gets these weapons, and then she waits. In the meantime, there is a sage, there is a king. I have the story here. So once upon a time, there was a king, Surata, who ruled over the entire earth. So the whole planet, he was the king of the whole earth. So all the whole earth, and he looked after his subject as if they were their children. So a loving king. Still, one of the clans became his enemies and vanquished him and sent him to exile. So sent their king to exile, and they got the kingdom, which is a story that repeats itself many times, because in the Mahabharata and other books that we have read, people do things like this. So he went on exile, and he reached the hermitage of a sage, where animals of different types lived in harmony, like a tiger and a cow, and everybody living in harmony. So he loved it, and he stayed there for some time. And there, once he settled there, he began to worry. And I think it's like the ashram, no? When people come for 1-2 days, they're very happy, very high, and then suddenly the mind begins doing its thing, and they begin to worry and get bored and wonder, question many things, etc. So the king is thinking, why am I feeling like this? I should be happy to be free. And instead, I worry about those people who were so mean to me. Are my sons being treated well? Are my elephants being fed? Is there peace, or are they getting drunk? What is the situation there? So they come to the sage, And the king asked like this: our minds are drawn into attachment and egotism. What is it, O exalted one, that causes this ignorance, even in the presence of our wisdom and understanding? So he's saying, I'm intelligent, of course, I'm a king, and I understand many things, but I still feel that attachment and worry about those who are left behind. So what is the reason? And he's thinking, and then he takes a walk, and in the walk he finds what they call a tradesman or a businessman. In some books it's translated as businessman, and some others as tradesman, but it's somebody in business. So in the vicinity of the hermitage, he saw a Vaisya trader and asked him, who are you and why are you here? You appear to be struck by grief. Why are you so upset? The trader replied, my name is Samadhi. I come from a rich family, but my family has banished me, and I don't know if they are well. Why do I still worry about those people? Why this attachment? So the two of them had the same problem, which is, is part of the story. So they come to the sage, right? And the rishi responded this. He gave a short answer, and he's going to give a long answer. So he says, Maya, the great measurement of consciousness, because Maya is a word that also means to measure. Everything that can be measured is unreal, is Maya. And if it's infinite, then it's real. So what we think is real is not, and what we think is not real is. Because if we can measure it, then it's temporary, and therefore in the scriptures is not considered to be eternal, therefore not considered to be real, like real. It's real for some time, like we are. We are real for some time, and then we're not. And everything, even the biggest pyramids in the world, or an insect that lives for 24 hours, everything, is not real from the viewpoint that it can be measured. So it says, the great measurement of consciousness, Maya, is the cause of the circumstance of all objects in creation and their relationship. So the delusion is what creates everything around us, creates us, and the relationships. So the relationship, for example, like with my computer, if I love my computer too much, it's a big problem, because the day when I have to change it, or I lose it, or something happened to it, then I suffer because of the attachment. So the relationship has to be in a certain way that we'll be explaining in the course of the Chandi Path, because when they are based on attachment, suffering ensues. And the second thing that the sage says, the great Lord of the universe is put in the sleep of divine union, and therefore the world is deluded by her. So it could be like a Mahavishnu that is sleeping in the divine union. You suppose that is with Shakti, with Lakshmi, or for some reason he fell asleep, and therefore the world is deluded by her. We are deluded by Maya. That's what he's trying to say. In the meantime, there's this another story that he must tell them. The sage is when Sri Vishnu conquers two of these asuras. It's called Madhu and Kaitava. Madhu and Kaitava. In the first chapter of the Chandi Pathah, Sri Vishnu vanquishes these demons, Madhu and Kaitava, after 5,000 years of strife. So they were fighting, and in the end, Sri Vishnu wins. Through beheading these enemies, Vishnu acquires the name Madhusurana, which is the one who killed Madhu, the slayer of the demon Madhu, which is the 73rd name of the Vishnu Sahasranam. So when we read this thing, we learn a lot. We can check it in our chant, number 73, Madhusurana. So he kills them, and then he makes them disappear, but there are other asuras or demons that will come forth. This Chandi Path is 3 episodes. So the first, the second, and the third. The first is Durga. The second is Lakshmi, but it doesn't mean that Lakshmi does anything. It is just like presiding deity to where the first offering or the first prayer and praise is offered. So when we begin with this episode 2, we talk to Lakshmi. We do a chant to Lakshmi. Lakshmi sprang from other precious things from the foam of the ocean. We know that. When churned by the gods and the demons for the recovery of Amrita, which means the nectar of immortality. So from those days, they churned the milk, and instead of other things, Lakshmi came, which I'm sure was the inspiration for the Venus that painting from where a goddess is coming. Is a Greek painting, Botticelli. I think he thought of Lakshmi. So she appeared with a lotus in her hand, therefore she's also called Padma. Then Deepavali is a festival of lights when we honor this goddess, Mahalakshmi. This festival is in honor of beauty and wealth, and we love it. We love Deepavali. On October 20 and 21st, Deepavali will be commemorated at Shanti Mandir with a Lakshmi Puja at sunset. So you can already plan for October 20, 21st. Then they create Devi. He comes back to, okay, I was telling you this story about Devi. And then he lists which god gave what weapon. But I think I'm going to skip this because then the time, But it's quickly. Varuna gave a rope, Kumara gave a lance, Rudra gave a trident, Surya a bow and arrow, Vishnu a discus, Indra thunderbolt, Vayu a conch, and Kuberas a mace. So she is totally armed with her 10 arms and 10 weapons. So the first demon that the Devi is going to face is called Mahishasura, which takes the form of a buffalo. So creates this buffalo and is very, very bad. And is very fierce. But to make a long story short, Devi vanquishes him and destroys him. But in the realm of the demons, they are seeing all this and they're becoming very, very angry with the Devi. So as I was saying, this is not exactly a demon, but they embody all the wrong qualities. And this one was called self-conceit and self-deprecation. Self-conceit is I think too much of myself. Self-deprecation, I think too little of myself. So either of these two is the name of this Mahishasura. So we begin to see, okay, what we bring when we come to the Chandi Path, to this festival, we bring our feelings that we want to overcome so that we become more like centered to gain knowledge and how to live life. And that is what is done every 6 months, because you will see that when it ends, then we need to come 6 months later for more medicine. So we do that, and then she triumphs over this one. There are 9 types of Devis, 9 aspects of Durga. In each one of the days, we do one honor to one of those. One is the daughter of the Himalayas, one is the daughter of this and that. It's 9. We will see this probably during Navaratra. I hope that there will be space to learn a little more about this. And then the deity of episode 3 is Saraswati, which is the goddess of wisdom. She holds in her hands all this, a book. During the 8, 9, and 10 day of Navaratra, Saraswati is worshipped in the form of books, and children are traditionally initiated into the world of letters. So they take a piece of paper and they take a pencil, and the child is taught how to do this in honor of Saraswati. Then a mala of crystals, which represent the power of meditation and spirituality. A pot of sacred water representing the purification and creative powers. And a veena, which is a string instrument that represents perfection in the arts. So she's also the patroness of musicians, painters, all kinds of artists. And also I have seen that on that day, they put the books for accounting. They offer her also that. So very important, Saraswati. When Devi was challenged by the next set of demons, which is Chanda and Munda, then what happens is that they travel to Pushkara, which is a sacred place, and remain there in prayer for 1,000 years. Remain there in prayer for 1,000 years. Then God Brahma saw that the brothers were doing penance, and he granted them a boon. It was at this time that lesser asuras, so these asuras were closer on their way to becoming enlightened, but there are others who came, called Shumba. They carried reports of the goddess to Shumba, who sought to possess the Devi. They told her, there's this woman, is extremely beautiful. She should be your wife. You have the best jewels and the best homes, and you are the king of everything. And this woman is so beautiful, you should marry her and bring her to your house. So the Shumba sent his ambassador, which is called Sugriva, to ask Devi to marry this demon. It was then decided that the demonic brothers, that if the Devi would not come willingly, they would have to abduct her. There's even a part of this where it says, grab her by the hair and bring her. The demon Dumbralochana and his retinue of 60,000 asuras went to kidnap the Devi, but she and her lion managed to slay the entire army. So this is the story of this. And then I want to tell you something about chapter 5. Because chapter 5, what happens is that it's important because two things happen there. Two things happen in the sense that, yeah, I have it here. So first, the gods begin to praise the Devi. And this is a chant that we do here that is called the Devi Stotram, no? But they call it the Devi Stuti. And so what it says is to that Devi, Ya Devi, means to that Devi. So they're not talking in front of her, they're talking about her. Ya Devi, Sarva Bhutesho means she exists in everything, Sarva Bhutesho, and is embodied, Sarva Bhutesho. So Rupena, she is of the shape of something. So what I thought is I would read a few of these because there's 21 of these. If you want to take the book, it's 21, so I thought it's 9 days of Navaratra. We can practice 3 of those. So I'm going to get 3 of these advocations of the Devi and practice that quality during the 9 days. So 3 every day. You may think maybe it's too much, but we have 9 days to practice. So the first one is called, is in page 71 on this. And then the chanting book, the one that says, Yadevi Sarva Bhutesho Vishnu Mayeti. So Vishnu Mayeti means this, means Sri Vishnu creates everything using the Maya of her consort, of her goddess. So how do I create my own world? All the time I'm creating everything by my thoughts, by my actions, by my perceptions. And really what I see is a product of how my mind works to interpret that which is brought to me. Because when I'm feeling very happy, the world is very beautiful and everything is very nice. And when I'm not in a good space, then the reality that I perceive is different. So when you realize these things, you think, yeah, I am just like Devi. I am just like Ya Devi Sarva Bhuteshu. That Devi who is in everything is embodied as Maya, as the Maya of Vishnu. It's a very, very good explanation. So it says we offer to her obeisances to her, who is called Vishnu Maya, the incomprehensible power of Vishnu, which seemingly projects time-space causality. So we create this world. And then in all beings, she is salutations, 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 again and again. Namastasye, namastasye, namo namaha. So we're not going to see the 21, probably no time, but 3. So the next one is called Ya Devi, so to that goddess, Sarva Bhuteshu, that is in everywhere and everything. Chetane Tibyanayate. So the second one says, who is known as consciousness, awareness, sentience in all beings, salutations to her. So when you see something that you don't like, this is what I'm planning to do. I don't like this, yeah, but you know what? Ya Devi, that goddess is in everything. How can I bring myself to accept, to not to like, to understand that all this is part of the one existence of the one Satchit Ananda? Because she is in everything. It says it very clearly. And the third one, it says, Ya Devi, so that goddess that is in everything, is in the intellect. This we can understand easily because we like our intellect. So Ya Devi Sarva Bhutesho Buddhi Rupena Samstita. So she's embodied in the brain and the Buddhi in the intellect. So it says, Devi, who abides in all beings as intellect, discriminating, decisive, intelligent, are salutations to her. I think we have a little more time, so let's see another 3. Are you enjoying this? I think it's great to chant and understand, and then to see how this relates to me. Because Devi is all of this, good for her, but how does that benefit me? By establishing her in me. And I'm going to make a pause here because I just remember something, that Baba Muktananda used to recommend a meditation that used to be called He in my body, the Guru or the God in me. And it goes like this, like his head in my head. But you totally feel it, okay? His eyes, or her eyes, if there's a lady, his eyes in my eyes. And you see, no, like in my case would be Gurudev's eyes. His nose in my nose, but seriously. His mouth in my mouth, his mouth in the seat, in my hands. And you begin to be possessed by that Guru, part by part, slowly, deeply, with great faith and devotion. And it is amazing. You know, that is a great meditation. Baba Muktananda used to recommend it. He used to meditate like that on Bhagavan. So why do I say this? Because I think the point of chanting these praises is like, what of this can I absorb, imbibe, and become? Which I already theoretically, I know that I am. But am I really? So the other one is 5. So the next one says, Yadevi Sarva Bhutesho Nidra Rupena Samstita. So she is of the form of sleep. This means something because we have read that Brahman is the 3 states and the 4th. So it's being awake, deep sleep, dreaming state, and Turiya. So if we think that she is asleep, we think, okay, when I go to sleep, I will also remember that I'm about to enter Devi in her form as sleep. So it's our obedience to her, the Devi, who abides in all beings as sleep, giving respite, rejuvenation, bodily salutations. You know, then we start thinking, okay, yeah, Devi is in this also. Then after this is Yadevi, so that goddess, Sarva Bhuteshu, which is in everything, Kshuda Rupena Samsita, which means hunger. Maybe sometimes we think, oh, I shouldn't be feeling hungry. I'm not spiritual enough. I feel like having something. Then you remember, okay, Devi is in everything. Devi is in the hunger. He is in the food. He is in thirst. He is in everything. And this is why they include this praise in the hymn, that it is who abides in all being a hunger and thirst by implication, we adore, or we salutations. And then one more is this one, as a shadow, because you know how even psychology said, embrace your shadow. So it could be a shadow like when you stand by the sun and you cast a shadow, or a psychological shadow, something that we don't like. I get inspired sometimes. So then it says, Yadevi, that goddess, Sarva Bhuteshu, that is in everything, Chaya Rupena, so she is of the form of the shadow. And when I find myself in that shadow, then I remember, yeah, I'm being like Devi, I'm installing Devi in me by accepting this shadow because she is Chaya Rupa, is the form of shadow. Mm-hmm. So we have this, you can get it, it's in the internet, I'll tell you where, because I find it extremely useful. And this is the fifth chapter of the Chandi Pathah, and this is where also she finds the other demon that is called Raktabija. Raktabija is one of the favorites because it's tremendo. So she defeats also Chanda and Munda. She keeps on defeating these people. And we have to remember that the sage is telling the story to the king and the tradesman. So he's telling them, Devi did this, Devi did that, and she did this, and she perceived. and her weapons and everything. So he's telling them the story. Then, one of the main ones, Kali defeats Raktabija. So Raktabija means red blood or red drop of blood. Raktabija was an asura who fought together with Shumba and Ishumba against Durga, Kali, Chamunda, because she takes on different forms. So she can be Durga, she can be Kali, she can Chamunda when she kills the other demons. Raktabija had a boon that whenever a drop of his blood fell on the ground, a duplicate Raktabija would be born at that spot. So a drop of blood, and there's another Raktabija, another monster, another drop. So when he's really very wounded, there is a lot of creation of these demons. So his name means he for whom each drop of blood is a seed. This chapter of the Chandi Pathah, Raktabija, is focused on Durga's battle with Raktabija as part of her battle against the Asuras Shumba and Ishumba, who had disenfranchised the gods from heaven. Raktabija was wounded, but drops of blood falling on the ground create innumerable another Raktabijas, and Durga was in difficulty. At this point, Devi created Kali. This is very interesting. She got so angry that she, from there, like here, frown. Kali came from this black-blue color, and with many capacities to serve Durga. So created out of her own anger. I can only imagine if they made a movie, animated. So at this point, she created Kali, who stretched her tongue over the earth, over the whole planet Earth, and licked up each drop of blood pouring from Raktavija's body and devoured his duplicates into the gaping mouth. So this she did. And then the final episode is that, of course, she vanquishes everybody and tells of the origin of the habit or the custom to do it every 6 months. Because in this narrative, the sage finishes stealing his audience of 2, and they commit themselves to Devi. After long austerities, tapas, Devi appears to them and grants each one a boon. She grants the king to regain his kingdom. So she's pleased with their devotion, with having heard all the narrations of her glories. And she says, I will give you each a boon. This is Devi in person offering. So the king wants to regain his kingdom and become immortal king after his death. And she says, Tatastu, no? That let it be so. So she grants him that he will be king again, regain his kingdom of the whole world, and his riches and everything, and he will be immortal and become another sage. So whatever the king is thinking of, this is granted. And it is said somewhere in the Chandi Pathah that whatever we ask for on the 8th day will be granted also. That if we chant it with devotion and regularity, that is the day to do it, the day when they do the fire ceremony. So we're learning all this. And so the merchant, because he knew too well, says he, the pain of attachment, asked for the knowledge that leads to liberation, which Devi mercifully grants. So he wants to know liberation, he wants to experience liberation, the tradesman, and the king gets his kingdom. So it is not a judgment of which of the wishes is good or bad. We want something, and because it's karmic, there's really no mistake. There's really no error. This is something that we understand about Indian culture, that because it's circular, and we are born and die, and born and die, and born and die, then there is no rush. Swami Vivekananda, who was the main ambassador from Paramahamsa Yogananda, one day was discussing with somebody who liked pleasures a lot, like a person who was happy with their life. And he said, Swami, enjoy life. And he says, let me tell you something. I enjoy life probably twice as much as you do. But because I know that I won't die, then I'm not in a rush. So this was Swami Vivekananda. His words full of wisdom in the sense that, yeah, you can enjoy everything, but because you know if you don't do it in this lifetime, you do it in the next one. Whereas somebody who doesn't believe in that, then he thinks this life is it and I must like spray, the orange dry, take everything now, It's two viewpoints, two different viewpoints. But this is what the king wants to regain the kingdom, and the other one wants to be liberated. Then it tells again about the 8th day, which is Ashtami, the day when Durga came after having done all the demons and is triumphant. And on the day they Ram Navami. And for some reason, that story of Ram, who came from the exile, is celebrated here as well. You remember that there's a boy who is represented back to Bhairava, is given a puja, a young child, male, and he usually comes with a dog, which represents power and protection. And there's also Kanya Puja, which is celebrated at the end of Navaratra. Young girls representing Devi are worshipped and given clothes, toys, and money. We do that here. It's very sweet. And then the final days. Now let me check if I have anything else here that may be forgetting. It's like to... Yeah, so we're seeing... why twice a year? Actually, because it's celebrated with new things to work, new things to clean, new things to purify. And there's another one that we chant here, so which is convenient to know. You know that we participate in the chant with Chandi Pathah, this one, and there is also the other one. I'm not going to find it. The Namastestu, 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 you know, that is in another chapter. So we are part of the celebration when we chant this. We have the books, we have the desire to chant, we enjoy it. And one second. Okay, it's in chapter 11. Praising the victory of the goddess. This is the other chant we do together. Narayani Namastuste. Namastuste. So we do that. So this is the stories of the Chandi Pathah. Of course, every year, every time we learn more. And this time we are going to study something very important, which is the Sri Vidya. Sri Vidya is a tantric cult that Gurudev has wanted us to start studying Saundarya Lahari. And I'll tell you briefly what it is about, because it is really very interesting. So there's these advocations of Devi. There's Mahalakshmi, Mahasaraswati, Mahadurga. And then there's in that I just studied that, the Mahalakshmi creates the 10 or so Lakshmis, and there's many types of Lakshmis if you look for them. So there's like another world of this, but basically it's the patroness of beauty and wealth and the consort of Vishnu. And then Durga is the consort of Rudra, and Saraswati the consort of Brahma. But at the same time, these three represent the Shaktis. So Lakshmi represents Kriya Shakti, or the power of action. Durga, consort of Rudra, represents Icha Shakti, which is the power of will. And then Saraswati represents Jnana Shakti, or the power of knowledge. So when you worship these Devis, then you attract these powers. Is this and many more things, but this is the basics. So Sri Vidya is a Hindu religious system devoted to the goddess called Lalita Tripura Sundari. Tripura Sundari means beautiful goddess of the three cities. Tripura Sundari. This beautiful goddess of the three cities. We're going to start a lot of this study. 1,000 names for this form of Devi I recited in the Lalita Sahasranama. So 1,000 names of this Lalita Tripura Sundari we chant every Friday, and during Navaratra every day. Details vary of the belief on this. Some parts are found in Kashmir Shaivism, and usually initiation must be done by a guru, which is something we have, so we have no problem there. Sri Vidya then is knowledge and science. And when we practice this, we learn more about how the world works. There are, I'll tell you what, The practices of Sri Vidya aim at obtaining both material prosperity and self-realization. So, Boga, mukti bhukti. It's not against enjoying life, it's just enjoying life, but in the awareness that we are that consciousness, that Devi. Many Sri Vidya mantras are available in print, but they are considered more potent in the context of initiation by the Guru, obviously. So there's many mantras. And then everything comes in threes, if you notice. So Tripura means 3 cities. Sundari means beautiful. The 3 cities are the triple form of the goddess that are found in the triadic doctrine of Shaktism. According to Bhaskararaya commentary on the Tripura Upanishad, there are 3 forms of the Devi. We can worship in 3 forms: physical, subtle, and supreme. Physical is called dense and is in the form, might be a picture, might be a statue. Then subtle is the form of the yantra, of which we will see these geometrical forms that represent the universe in triangles, and it's all very scientific. And then supreme or transcendental, which is in the form of mantra, and the silence that comes after repeating the mantra. This is the supreme transcendental. And the corresponding modes of worship are meditation first on the physical form of the Devi or the deity or the icon, inner contemplation of the deity's yantra, or absorption in the deity's root mantra. So there is root mantra, the root, like there's a root for every word, and then it grows like a flower into many words, and there's different mantras that come from there. So then, Sri Yantra is an auspicious instrument. So yantra, even a computer, sometimes in Sanskrit they call yantra because it's an instrument. It's a subtle representation of Devi. It consists of 9 interlocking triangles that radiate out and surround the central point, which is Bindu, the junction point between the physical universe and the unmanifest source. So this is the yantra, which you can find on the internet. It is a very beautiful geometrical form that is made with triangles, and at the center there's a point or bindu. It's 4 isosceles triangles with the apices upward, which represent Shiva, and 5 isosceles triangles with the apices downward, which represent Shakti. And at the center bindu, the center of power, representing the invisible center from which the entire universe springs and expands. If you had the yantra here and you pull it from the center like this, it could create a form similar to a mountain or a pyramid, and it's called Mahameru in 3 dimensions. The 9 triangles are interlaced in such a way as to form 43 smaller triangles in a web symbolic of the cosmos. So when we study that, we see that each triangle has so many meanings about the creation and sustenance of the universe. Then we study also something about number 16, Shodasi, which is represented as a 16-year-old girl, the Devi as a young girl, and the moon has 15 faces and 1 is hidden. So the power is in the 15 mantras that we learn, and 1 that is hidden and can only be revealed by the Guru. So this is like the moon has 16 faces, 15 are known and 1 is hidden. And then the moon has also, each one has a Devi, and each of these Devis has a mantra. And it's a lot to learn, but if you learn it and practice it, then I guess must be not so difficult. So this refers to her, Shodasi, as the 16 syllables. Then there's wisdom. There's the 5-element puja that we do here on Fridays. We chant it. And everything has to do with numbers, everything has to do with science, everything has to do with knowledge, actually. There's a lot to study here. If we like to study, this is our path. And at the end, we could say that this is also not all of this that I already said, but it also is related to the levels of speech, and this will be the final contribution. So the levels of speech are 4. One is the most subtle. The subtle one is called para, and this is pure consciousness, it's pure silence, and there is like a vehicle of expressing it, which is silence. So when we finish repeating a mantra and the mantra creates a silence, that is the level of para, that is the subtle level of the Devi, that is the subtle level of us. Because when we are in that deep silence, then that is when great ideas come, inspirations come, total peace comes, joy. Sometimes you feel like I'm smiling. Why? Because you go into that deep silence that is the realm, really, of the Devi. Then there is the icon or visible Devi that corresponds to the level of speech. It relates to sensation, and the vehicle is a spoken word. So we can speak, but because we have prior the inspiration or the spanda of that silence. In other words, every word, including the mantras, comes from that silence. So we can either go from the silence to the mantra or the mantra to the silence. So we repeat it with a lot of concentration, we will see that eventually there is a silence, and the silence lasts longer each time as we practice more. And then the contemplation of the Devi Yantra, what I was talking about, the triangles. And the vehicle of that speech is intuition. So there are 4 of those that we will be studying. And at the end, this is really the end, then the person who translated the Chandi Pathah, Swami Satyananda Saraswati from the Devi Mandir, he wrote this. In one sense, Devi resides in the image, the photo or idol of worship. In another application, she is manifested in the physical body of the worshipper. So you install it in you. On every level, the scripture is a commentary on the evolution of the reader's consciousness. So it depends on the reader, depends on us, like how deep we want to go into the Chandi Pathah, into this teaching. The teaching is there, but we have to be prepared with the instruments. It gives definition to method and practice of the oral tradition, which can only be learned from a qualified guru. The practice of which, when mastered, opens up doors to the secret, to the perception, a new way of perceiving ourselves and the world around us. So it's a big promise that is contained in this teaching. And finally, it says the Pathah is an intellectual interpretation of the Chandi. Intellectually, we interpret what the Chandi means to us. But to realize the real Chandi, we must strive to make Devi sum and substance of his entire life, or one's entire life. So to see it in everything. And this is why this practice of Yadevi is important, because we start opening doors towards levels, deeper levels in ourselves, which is where actually Devi resides. So this is what I prepared. We are very happy to be able to do Navaratra here with Gurudev. It's from March 29 till April 5th. Cordially invited. And then we have many more programs that have here at Shanti Mandir. There's a course, Shiva Shakti, exploration of the relationship between Shiva and Shakti. And there will be an intensive on the 22nd of February and the 22nd of March. So both times is the 22nd. And then some other activities. And everything here is directed to our upliftment. Thank you for listening. Sadhguru Nath Maharaj Ki Jai.